Um, I'm gonna let the recording begin. Here we go. Thank you. So today we are going to, oh, and there's Sharon. Sharon, is your mom joining us on the Zoom? You're on mute, so I can't hear. You have to unmute it.
Yes, I think she's planning to.
Okay, great. Okay, I'll just keep an eye out for her.
Okay.
So here we go. So this final class is looking at the final song, or it's really a composite of songs. This final song is referred to either as Valjean's confession, or it's called the epilogue, depending on if you're looking at the Broadway recording or the film recording. But this is finally when kind of everything comes together for our characters. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful ending. It's very sad. There's a tearjerker that we're going to be listening to. So that's the content warning for today, because this is Jean Valjean's death. And he has, he has never told Cosette and Marius that he was the one who saved Marius from the barricades. And he's still constantly on the run. He flees, and the last scene is he's actually gone to the convent, and or maybe it's the church. Is it the convent? I think it's the convent. And he's sitting alone, and Marius and Cosette don't know where he's gone to, where he's been. And of course, it's their wedding day. And at the wedding, the innkeeper, Thénardier, comes and says, I know something about your father that's really terrible. I saw him carrying a corpse the night of the barricade battle. He was walking through the sewers with a corpse. Look, here's the ring I pulled off this corpse. And Marius says, oh my God, that's mine. That's my ring. He's the one who was carrying me to safety. Oh my goodness, we have to go find him. Where is he? Where is he? And he says, oh yeah, he's at the convent. Go find him at the convent. So the final scene is where they come to see him, and they're in their wedding dress, and he's ready to die, and he writes his last confession. He says, on this page, I write my last confession. It's the story that I have never told you, Cosette, of the identity that I used to have and the journey that I've been on, and tells about your mother Fantine, and so on. And really the resolution is reflecting on this journey that Valjean has been going through, where he has moved, as we said earlier, from a world of din, of judgment, to a world of rachamim, of compassion and mercy. And it all sort of comes full circle in that line: to love another person is to see the face of God. So his awakening to God, and his awakening to compassion and to other people was began with that encounter with the priest, just as he came out of prison, and where he understands that he can do kindness for someone else as well. And that's his guiding principle. So to love another person is to see the face of God. We're going to be looking at love of God, love of another. We're going to be looking at this teshuvah process that Valjean has been on. And he's very much on his deathbed. He's doing a moment of vidoy, of Jewish confessional, I think it's not Jewish confessional, but it's consistent with, asking for forgiveness, coming to terms with everything that's happened in one's life, and being able to articulate one's highest values. And for him, it's to love another person is to see the face of God. So we're going to open by watching the 10th anniversary concert. It's just glorious. It's just, it's beautiful. Fantine comes in. Fantine is actually coming in as a ghost, right? So he says, I'm ready, Fantine. Like, take me, Fantine, take me to your keeping. Just as he has cared for her daughter, now she's caring for him as he passes on to the next world. And Eponine comes in, and it's beautiful. Eponine and Fantine are singing together. with Jean Valjean. And then, of course, it morphs into the, like, do you hear the people sing, right? The last song is coming back to that scene with all of the students are coming, like all the ghosts are showing up basically for this finale, to take Valjean at the end of his life. So we'll watch the concert, then we'll look at the texts about love of God and love of the other. And then we'll close with the film version, which I mean, I was watching it again yesterday. It is beautiful what they did with that final scene. And it really actually speaks to the difference between a live theater venue and a film context. What you can do on film, obviously you lose a lot in terms of a live audience and all of that, but you know, where they're bringing back the images of those students, you're seeing those scenes, you're seeing those kids up close, and then, oh, I'm not, okay, we'll get to it when we watch it. I'm getting far ahead of myself. So we are going to start with the concert. As I said, I'm just pulling it up to make sure I have the right piece here. So it's quite a long piece. It's really a combined song. We may go a little bit past the hour today because I don't want to feel rushed. I want to make sure we get to listen and absorb these final moments of the musical. So here we go. Okay. Oh, of course we get an ad. No, we get an ad. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Today is the first chapter of my next great love story.
Today is the first.
Let's explain, you know, I played it yesterday and then I saved the spot. So if you don't play it today, they send you an ad today. Okay, here we go.
Shadows, I count the hours till I can sleep. I dreamed a dream, Cosette stood by. It made her weep to know I died. Alone at the end of the day, upon this wedding night I pray. Take these children, my Lord, to thy embrace, and show them grace. God on high, hear my take me now to thy care, where you are, let me be. Take me now, take me there. my life.
Papa, I do not understand. Are you all right? They said you'd gone away.
Cosette, my child, am I forgiven now? Thank God, I've lived to see this day.
It's you who must forgive a thoughtless fool. It's you who must forgive a thankless man. It's thanks to you that I am living. And again I lay down my life at your feet. Cosette, your father is a saint. When they wounded me, he took me from the barricade, carried like a babe, and brought me home to you.
How you are here again beside me. Now I can die in peace, for now my life is blessed.
You will live, Papa, you're going to live. It's too soon to say goodbye.
Yes, Cosette, forbid me now to die. I'll obey. I will try. On this page, I write my last confession. Read it well when I at last am sleeping. It's a story of those who always loved you. Your mother gave her life for you, then gave you to my keeping.
Come with me where chains will never bind you. All your grief at last behind you. Lord in heaven, look down on him in mercy.
Forgive me all my trespasses and take me to your glory.
Take my hand and lead me to salvation. Take my love, for love is everlasting. And remember the truth that once was spoken. To love another person is to see the face of God.
Even the darkest night will end and the sun will rise.
Isn't that amazing? Just amazing. Whew. So to love another person is to see the face of God. Before I forget, let me just copy and paste this right into our chat. If you'd like to open it on your own. And now I will share my screen. There's a series of texts that we'll look at. And the first two here are kind of by way of introduction, ve'ahavta. So those of you who are familiar with sitting in the Shar sanctuary, I've definitely used this in at least one sermon, saying, look up at this side and look up at that side. They both start with the word ve'ahavta, and you shall love. And on one side of the room, it says, ve'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, you shall love the Lord your God. Right from the paragraph of the Shema, with all your heart and soul. And the other side is ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, you shall love your fellow. So these are the two loves that God commands us, that the Torah requires of us: love of the other and love of God. And the two somehow become intertwined, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. There's a lovely reference to the face of the other as the face of God, where Yaakov encounters his brother after many, many years, coming back to Esav and presenting him with gifts. And Yaakov says, please accept my gift. Accept this, even though he's saying, no, I have so much. But Yaakov is expressing sort of the greatness of this moment in seeing his brother's face. Ki al kain ra'iti panecha, seeing your face is kirot panei Elokim, like seeing the face of God. And the commentators sort of try to understand this in the context of him saying, please take this gift. Like when we go to God, we present a gift, a mincha, an offering. And so too, like, I want to present you with a gift. So I think because of the relationship between Yaakov and Esav being sort of fraught, the commentators, I want to say, minimize this moment and say it's just kind of a technical thing he's saying. I'm seeing you, I'm greeting you just like I would greet God. I want to greet you with a gift. But I think there's something beautiful in this moment of I'm looking at you, I'm seeing godliness in your face, even though this is the face of the brother that I wronged many years ago. There's some redemptive moment here, seeing the other and recognizing the godliness in the other. So we're not going to say more about that story, but I feel it's very relevant, and especially in the face, right? The face of God and the face of the other. And that comes back again and again when we're talking about panim, face, as if God had a face. But of course, God doesn't have a face. We have a face, and we approximate that through our experience of the other. I did want to share this lovely text. If we're talking about the seat of God being somehow in the relationship between two human beings, that when one encounters another person, one also can encounter God in that space. It brings to mind this beautiful teaching about the relationship, not just between any two people, but the most intimate relationship between a husband and a wife. And this is a teaching from the Talmud in the Tractate of Sota that specifically says when that relationship works, it is godly. God is there. So Rabbi Akiva taught ish ve'isha, man and woman, zachu, if they merit, or if the English here, reward through a faithful marriage. I mean, it's kind of reading into, like, basically, if they have a successful relationship, then zachu shechina beinehem. Then the Shekhinah, God's presence, dwells between them, almost in that space between them, in the relational space, there is God. Lo zachu, and if they don't merit, if something is disrupted in that relationship, eish ochaltan, then it's just Aish, fire between them. So the English translation here explains like a whole world of drash that is inherent in this very simple statement. When it's a good connection, when it's a good relationship, God is present. When it's not, then it's fire. It's fire eating them up between them. So the words ish and isha are the same, are almost identical. The difference between them is the middle letter yud in the word ish and the final letter he in isha. Those two letters can be joined to form the name of God, yud and he. But if they're making it here about faithfulness and licentiousness, but you could say it even more expansively. But if they don't merit, to build a godly relationship, then the yud and the he are taken out of both of those words, which just leaves you with ish. If you look at this word ish without the yud and this word isha without the he, what's left is just an aleph and a shin in both of those words. That's fire. It consumes them. They burn one another. So it's about a peaceful relationship with godliness, or a fiery, not in a good way, but a destructive relationship is where God is not present. So again, to love another person is to encounter God, is to bring godliness into the world. We're going to come back to that at the end of our conversation here, but I'm going to leave aside this whole God is within the connection between two people. And I wanted to introduce another aspect or another Torah reference where the relationship with God is connected to the relationship between two faces or two people, or here it's the two keruvim. So the two cherubs, the keruvim, are the two I was going to say cherub-like faces, the two faces, cherubic faces, that rest on the cover of the ark. So in the ark, in the holy temple, and earlier than that in the Mishkan and the tabernacle, there was this golden cover and these two winged creatures on top of the cover, and these creatures have faces. And that's the place God says that I'm going to meet you. I'm going to speak to you from. Within the Holy of Holies, from atop that ark, in between those two keruvim. So, v'no'adati lecha sham. This is in the book of Shemot, in the instructions around building the Mishkan. God says, I'm going to be mo'ed, no'ad, va'ad. These are all similar words in Hebrew that means meeting place. V'dibarti itcha, and I'm going to speak to you from that place where me'al hakaporet, the cover of the ark, mibein shnei hakruvim, from between those two cherubs, asher al aron ha'edut, that are on top of that holy ark, that ark of the covenant. That's the spot where God and Israel communicate, in the space between the two keruvim. I mean, it mirrors really everything we just said before. It's kol asher atzaveh etcha el bnei Yisrael. Everything that I have to tell you, that's where it's going to emanate from, between those two keruvim. And this is another text later on, just describing these keruvim. Vayihiyu hakruvim porsei knafayim lemala. They had wings spread out above. Sochechim bechanfehem al hakaporet, covering over the cover of the ark. Ufneihem ish el achiv, their faces facing one another. El hakaporet hayu pnei hakruvim, facing toward the cover of the ark. So there's actually a contradiction here. Which way are they facing? Are they facing each other, or are they facing somewhere else, maybe facing down toward the ark? This is a contradiction moment, which is not uncommon for the Torah to have something that seems to contradict. And then, of course, generations of rabbis have what to comment on. This is not a contradiction, says the Talmud. This is depending on how Bnei Israel are behaving. Here we go. So this is in the tractate of Baba Batra, talking about these cherubs, these keruvim. The question is, how were they positioned? Ketzad hein omdin. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar. There's a debate between these two rabbis, Yochanan and Elazar. One rabbi says, Chad amar pnehem ish el achiv. their faces were toward each other. V'chad amar, and the other says, pneihem labayit, their faces were toward the house. So it sounds like maybe toward the wall, or it could be an interpretation of that verse we said earlier, maybe towards the ground, or here it quotes the faces were toward the house. That's from the book of Divrei Hayamim. So Leman Amar Pnehem Ish El Achiv Haktiv Pnehem Labayit. So, but if you think that they were facing each other, how do you explain this verse that says specifically they're facing not each other? Lo Kashya, it's not a difficulty. We're going to explain how. The answer is it depends. Kan Bizman She Yisrael Osin Ritzono Shel Makom. Kan Bizman She'ein Yisrael Osin Ritzono Shel Makom. Here, where it states the Kruvim are facing each other, it's when the Jewish people are doing the will of God. But where it describes the cherubs facing not toward each other, it's because they've turned away from God. So these Kruvim become a mashal, a parable of sorts, or a symbol of how Bnei Israel are doing. Are they facing toward God, or are they facing away from God? And the faces of the Kruvim will reflect kind of how Bnei Israel and God are relating to one another at that time. There's another text which I didn't bring, but that describes that when they would open the curtain and look through to the ark, what they would see were the Kruvim intertwined, like almost in a sensual way, intertwined with one another. It describes the way that God and Bnei Israel are intimately connected. This could get to Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, right, where there's a sense that the relationship between God and Israel is likened to a romantic relationship. I mean, we could go, this is a whole class series we could get to, just, to love another person is to see the face of God. But alas, we're doing this in one session. So isn't that beautiful? Their faces toward one another, the way God and Israel are facing toward each other. If we're facing away from God, if we betrayed God, the Kruvim are going to reflect that. I want to move on to really what I feel is the message of Les Misérables as a whole, and of this line in the finale, to love another person is to see the face of God. And that is, if you want to really understand more about God, spend time with other people. If you want to understand more about other people, spend time with God. This relationship affects that one affects this one. Sometimes one can enter into one relationship through another. And to love another person, was the way that Jean Valjean came to God. I mean, this last scene, he is praying. Again, by the way, I didn't mention this. We have God on high, right? He's returning to his prayer, which first had been a prayer for another, was his compassion for Marius. And now it's a prayer for himself, that he's going to be meeting God. And he says, take me now to your care. It's beautiful. So there's a really lovely observation about the one of the greatest symbols of chesed in our tradition, which is Avraham. Avraham epitomizes kindness to another, especially in his efforts around hospitality, welcoming the stranger. And in the moment where we see Avraham welcoming the three angels, it's right after he was talking with God. So it's Vayera Hashem, basically God appears to him, and then he sees these visitors. So the Talmud here says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Hachnasad orchim, welcoming guests, is so important, is so great. It even trumps receiving the divine presence. Gedolah hachnasat orchim me hakbalat pnei shechina. Because how do we know this? Avraham interrupted a conversation with God, essentially, to greet guests. Dichtiv vayomar Hashem imna matzati chen be'enecha alna ta'avor. Abraham requested that God, just wait, hold on here. I don't want these guests to pass by. So welcoming the other, kindness to the other in this scene is more important than talking to God, which is ironic in the way that we see sometimes people ignoring the dignity of another person in the name of, religious zealotry. That's the farthest thing from what the Torah wants us to do. So I'm going to jump from this to, again, along the lines of, well, this isn't exactly this. I guess I'm making a jump. What this isn't saying is, this isn't saying God, Abraham encountered God in his generosity to the guests. It's not saying that. It's Abraham put God on hold to, keep this other mitzvah of hachnasat orchim. But now I'm going to show you a text that even goes farther than that, that welcoming guests is an encounter with God. Welcoming guests is religious devotion. So the context here is completely different, has nothing to do with Abraham, has nothing to do with welcoming guests, has to do with the building of the altar, the Mizbeach. And there's a verse that sort of starts by mentioning the Mizbeach. And by the end of the verse, it uses the word Shulchan Hashem, like this table of God, which it's not unusual. The Mizbeach, essentially the altar, is where we bring offerings to God. It's like God's table, so to speak. And the Talmud is sort of asking this question, like, wait a second, the verse started with the word Mizbeach, it ended with the word Shulchan. That means it's talking about the altar, but then why at the end is it not referring to it in the same word? It's referring to it with the word table. So that's what it's asking. The verse began with the word altar, patach b'mizbeach, v'siyem b'shulchan, and ended with the word table, both words being used to describe the same item. So the rabbis now are going to use this to give a really beautiful message. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish to Amrei Travayu. They said together, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, these two rabbis who were friends and chavrutas and sparring partners in other ways. They said as follows: Bizman shebeit hamikdash kayam. At a time when we had the temple, mizbeach mechaper al adam. The altar was the site of atonement. The altar was the site of prayer, essentially, of begging God for forgiveness. But now we don't have an altar. So what do? So usually what we say is, we don't have an altar, we don't have a temple, we don't have the sacrificial system. What we have instead is prayer. And that's a thread throughout the Talmud, throughout the world of halacha, that all of the prayers that we pray, Shachrit and Mincha and Mariv, are parallel to the system of sacrifices. Prayer is now replacing the sacrificial system. But this says something completely different. We don't have an altar now, but we have a table. How you act with your table is now like the altar. Achshav shulchano shel adam mechaper alav. A person's table is his greatest advocate, is his greatest atonement. Atonement meaning not just if you sinned, but that's the function of the temple, was to pray for atonement, to connect with God. So feeding needy guests atones for one's sin. These translations, by the way, that are adding a little bit, they're not coming up out of nowhere. It's usually pulling it from commentators that explain what this means. What does one's table symbolize here? One's table is where one welcomes people. And we don't have an altar. We don't have that way to connect with God, but we connect with God through our tables, through the way we feed others. To love another person is to welcome God. Isn't that beautiful? I'm moving quickly, moving right along. This is the last piece. So we've seen, sorry, I'm actually going to scroll back up because I can't remember what we've seen. Okay, we've seen the love of God, the love of the other. These are the two cardinal loves in Judaism: the face of God, the face of the other. I know it's not great when I scroll, it gets blurry for all of you. We've seen that you can encounter God within a relationship between two people. And we've seen that the relationship of God and Israel is symbolized almost like the relationship between two people, or two faces here with the kruvim. And now we've also understood that an act of kindness can be an act of devotion to God, an act of generosity around the table. We're now in Breshit. We're going back to the very core of this idea that to connect with human beings is to connect with God, and to connect with God is to connect with human, because each and every person has what we call a Tselem Elohim, the little spark of the divine. And when we encounter that divine in the other person, we're encountering God. And we treat that person with love and with dignity and with compassion. We are recognizing the godliness within that individual. So it comes right from the beginning, Bereshit. Vayomer Elokim na'aseh Adam. God says, let us make man. Let us create humankind. Betzalmenu kidmutenu. In the image of God, in the likeness of God. So we somehow look like God, or we have God looking like us, or we have God within us. I'm just sort of expressing many ways of understanding this verse, this very mysterious verse. B'tselmenu, in our image, of course, the royal we. This is the commentaries have a field day on who's we here. God was talking to the angels. Why is God talking to the angels right now? When we're going to create man, humankind in our image, and humanity, of course, will rule over the fish and the birds and the whole earth, etc., etc. And again, reiterating in verse 27, Vayivra Elokim et ha'adam b'tselmo. God created humankind in God's image. B'tselem Elokim bara'oto. Zachar nokeva bara'otam. God created humans, man and woman, in the image of God. So if you want to find God, look at another person. And that here is not a Levinas scholar, but I mean, I understand sort of the basics of this philosophy that Emmanuel Levinas, the early 20th century Jewish philosopher, sort of put out about the nature of relationship and the nature of God. He essentially wrote about that we find God in the other. We owe everything to the other when we encounter another person. We have no choice but to suspend our selfishness and to recognize the needs of the other. And he writes about sort of God limiting oneself to becoming part of the world through relationship with other people. So this is a very brief quote, which I'm sure doesn't do justice to the complexity of the Levinas philosophy, but this is what I've brought us. There can be no knowledge of God separated from the relationship with men. The other is the very locus of metaphysical truth and is indispensable for my relation with God. What he's saying is very radical. I cannot find God. It's indispensable, right? I cannot find God or relationship with God unless I also find relationship with the other person. And there can be no understanding or knowledge of God without taking the time to be in relationship with another human being. That is how we find the face of God. To love another person is to see the face of God. I don't know if Alan Blubleel, who wrote Les Mis, ever read Emmanuel Levinas, but this is it. So let's take a little time and catch our breath.
Wow.
I see your hands. Wow. Philip wants to say something. Gloria. Okay, Gloria, your hand is raised. I'm going to switch my background. I've just realized my background is with the letters. It's so hard to, I've got another background here.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I had two comments, but the more recent one is really what our relationship with God is, for me anyways, a reflection of our ability to empathize with our fellow human beings. I mean, the relationship that we have with God is meaningless if we don't see God in each person that we encounter. And the way you do that is to try and identify things that you have in common with the other, because we're all made in God's image. So
yes, beautiful.
I thought that you illustrated that beautifully in the three sections. But the other one I wanted to say about the Kravim, where are they looking, reminded me of, the enigma of the Mona Lisa, that wherever you look, her eyes are following you. Because what's important is that when we're interacting with people, that we are making eye contact.
Right.
That keeps us honest. You know, if you're looking away or you're looking over the person's shoulder, you're not really,
Well, and we say the eyes are the window to the soul.
yeah. There's all kinds of expressions, but truly, if you're really communicating with somebody, you ought to be looking at them.
Which is why Zoom is so challenging.
Well, I'm always watching you.
And even if I'm looking at you, now I'm not looking at my camera, and now you're not seeing me look at you, I'm looking over here.
Exactly. Anyways, wonderful class.
Thank you. Annie, go ahead.
I wanted to say that another form of love, other than between man and woman, is a devotion, a love of devotion. And I was thinking of Ruth and Naomi.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
And because of her devotion to Naomi, we get brachas, intense brachas coming out of that devotion, and then eventually David HaMelech. So
the relationship between Ruth and Naomi is not described with the word ahava, it's described with the word chesed. Kind of.
okay, so chesed, devotion, it's like
Yeah.
that's what your talk made me think about, because it's coming up and Shavuot is coming up.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And it is, you know, out of kindness comes, as you say, blessing, you know, that ripple effect of positivity out into the world, which we see throughout Les Mis. One good deed leads to another, mitzvah goret mitzvah. Other thoughts, comments in the room? What's sitting with you on this? Yes, Philip.
Yeah, well, my primary comment is wow.
Wow, right?
Made. Fabulous. Thank you, Rabba Rachel.
Thank you.
The second question, I guess, is I saw that kruvim are feminine, according to the grammar that I saw the reference.
Ah.
Feminine, are they feminine or am I?
In Shnei HaKruvim.
And then it's
I don't
there's
think
a reference
so.
that's using yud nun as the plural
So-
rather than yud mem.
So I know that in the Talmud that we looked at, Hain Osin, because we're in the world of Aramaic, doesn't necessarily mean feminine. 'Cause
Okay, so that's it. It's because it's the Aramaic. I
Yes,
realize.
yes. But I'm just looking back in the Torah verse themselves, we have plural. We don't have a singular here. We only have the plural, but the plural is him, is ufnehem. It's masculine. So I don't think we can make that assumption that they're feminine. In fact, they seem to me pretty gender non-specific.
If it were hame, it could be both. So or either.
Exactly. But what you're looking at in the Talmud text being Hain, Osin, you're right, but it's not Hebrew. It's not necessarily
Aramaic. Got it.
Yeah. It could be a conglomerate of. I'd have to look more closely.
Oh, don't bother.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I have to also, Philip, I know you're praising me and it's very nice. I have to give Hakarat HaTov to, there's a rabbinic listserv that I'm on that I just, you know, sometimes people share ideas or put ideas out into, you know, to ask some advice. And with this class, I just thought, let me see what the rabbinate says. This is the International Rabbinic Fellowship. So it's a group of a couple hundred modern Orthodox rabbis and educators. And a couple of these observations came from that group. The fact that Yaakov says, seeing your face is like seeing the face of God. I hadn't thought about that. That was one rabbi had mentioned that. And then actually Rabbi Yitzhak Greenberg is in this group, and he was the one who wrote about Abraham's Hachnasat Orchim, and that led me down that rabbit hole of the Hachnasat Orchim. And because I knew that comment about him leaving God to go welcome guests, but I hadn't thought about it in this context. He was welcoming God. He was serving God in another way.
My
So that's-
last comment is I don't know where you get the time. I'm overwhelmed. So thank you very, very much.
Well, I want to say, because I know, Philip, you're a regular in the rabbi's class on Thursdays. I will be teaching that class tomorrow. So if anyone can join me tomorrow, it's at 2:15 p.m. There's a Zoom link that you have to sign up to get, but you can email the rabbi's assistant, Layla, or you can email me. We can send it to you. So I had to have time for an extra class today, this week, I mean, but it's a joy and a pleasure, and really, and it helps actually when you have a group of colleagues like this that get the juices moving. And once they said this, and I thought, oh my gosh, there's that too. So it's a joy. I want to go back to just asking David, you had a comment, and anything, by the way, the floor is open to any other more general comments that are coming to mind from the last number of classes, because this is our last class in the series. So all of Les Mis is fair game. Go ahead, David.
Yes, it's just an observation. Love can be complicated. I mean, take the example of Jonathan. You know, his love for David was stronger than his love for his father.
Right, right. Or was in conflict with his love for his father.
Yeah.
He had to choose.
Jacob and Esau, his love for his brother was complicated, or there was fear in there for his family. Love is not always straightforward.
So can we extend that then to the conversation around love for God? I mean, that gets complicated as well. And people have a hard time sometimes with what God does in the world, or how to pray to God, or how to connect with God. Or our human relationships are the same, and maybe can inform that struggle too.
Yeah, or the struggle between God and materialism and consumerism.
Yeah.
The relationship with God is purely spiritual. Then there's a conflict with I want.
Right, right. And finding ways to bring godliness into the world, into materialism, into our everyday life. Yes, yeah. Yes.
I have spoken.
Deep RT. Thank you, David. Other comments? And remember, I know it's hard to unmute yourself on Zoom and then you say something, and is it interesting enough? Like, please, no pressure, even just a one sentence like, this is sitting with me. This is sticking with me. I'm really, pleased to consider that. It doesn't have to be a whole lecture, but anyone who wants to jump in is welcome. Esther, go ahead.
I was just thinking about what David just said, how complicated the feeling of loving God is, because there's a whole lot of things, I think, that go on, and it's not just love, it's questioning, it's wondering, respecting. There's so much that goes on there that also goes on between human beings and countries and everything else. And there's no answers. There's more questions to this than answers.
Right, right.
And
it's a lifelong project.
Yeah, and why is a big question for so many things. We know the whens and the wheres, but we don't always know the whys.
Yeah.
And we try to be wise about it.
Yeah, wise about the wise. I like that. I see Pearl wanted to chime in here.
Yeah, I'm reading the book called Caste by Elizabeth Wilkerson. It's about the caste system in the United States, the treatment of the Blacks as the lowest of the caste.
That's interesting.
India and Nazi Germany.
The caste terminology is interesting in that context.
Right, and you're talking about the religious white Christians of the South who love God, but they don't see the face of God in other people, right, in their treatment of the enslaved and the Blacks in the South. So you have this terrible contradiction. They're loving God, they're preaching, they go to church, and they're real Christians, so to speak. Yet,
right, they only see the face of God in
their own faces, and not in the face of others.
Right. Wow.
And we talked about last week about the translation of Les Mis. The original Les Mis, of course, was written in French. So the English is a translation.
Yeah, I wonder this line, what it would be in French if it would sound any different. I don't know.
Yeah.
Would it use the face?
It could.
I
don't know I don't know the original version in
I don't know.
French.
Now I'm thinking, oh, how quickly can I Google this? Maybe I'll find it. Maybe I'll find it while we're watching our next clip. We'll see. If anyone else comes upon something, please.
But it's just been wonderful. Loved every session.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. I want to play the scene from the film for those of you who can stay. What the film does is makes a few choices. First of all, instead of having Eponine show up in that scene, which is beautiful musically, but doesn't really make sense. Like Jean Valjean has nothing to do with Eponine. Why is Eponine there receiving Jean Valjean? It's Fantine. So they double down on the Fantine. They have Fantine really standing over him and taking him. But then instead of Eponine showing up, they have the priest, the original priest, which of course is played by Kohl Wilkinson, which was remarkable. So you're going to see him here in the film as the priest. And he, of course, if he's that much older than Jean Valjean, he's also coming back from the dead, so to speak, and bringing him into the light, bringing him into God in the world to come. And then the other change they make, just listen for the lyric where he says, I've written my last confession, read it well when I am at last am sleeping. It's a story. So in the original, the lyric is, it's the story of those who always loved you. Your mother gave her life for you and gave you to my keeping. In the remake, it's like, and now I'm losing the exact lyric. It's the story of love, and listen for it. Just listen for it as we watch together. They changed it's the story of to summarize this theme. It's a story of love and compassion, and I should have written it down as I was listening to it. So we'll all listen to it together. I just thought that was a very interesting choice on the filmmaker's part.
Rafael,
so please, yes, Farla, what's that?
Are you going to do more of these in the future?
Okay, so here's the plan. That's
fans, and we're left.
So this is the end of this series. I am taking a break for a couple of weeks so that I don't have to plan another class every week and can kind of think through my next move. So I'll be off for the next few classes. I may put together another short series toward the end of the spring, depending on how the weeks turn out. I feel that the musicals series has come to a natural end. Like for me, after Les Misérables, I cannot do anything else. Like I want to end on a high. I need to end on this. So I haven't yet decided and discussed kind of, can I find other means of thinking about art and text, creativity, film, music? I don't know. So the answer is, I don't know, but it's not going to be this.
But is it going to be something?
Yeah.
It's going to be something. It's going to be something, but I always break for the summer. I usually break after, beginning of June, mid to June, something like that. So I'll put together something brief, maybe end of May, like just a couple of weeks of something, maybe towards Shavuot. I was thinking maybe oriented towards Shavuot, even a couple of weeks. And then we'll break for the summer and resume in the fall. And I know I have a fan base that it has high expectations of me. So I won't let you down. And I'd love to also discuss what it looks like coming back in person and whether we could do a hybrid, something that's in person, which is also available online. So, that comes into play in terms of what we do. And if there's a film element, I have to think about all those angles.
Rachel, has it all been recorded? I mean, I wanted my granddaughters to be able to do this and go over it with them over some time when they have between school and leaving for Israel. And where do I find this?
It is all recorded. I'm going to email the link it should be in that link, all the YouTube series, but I'm going to make sure it's packaged well.
Please.
Somehow. Yeah. So people can look through the series. Okay. I know some people have to leave. Rachel at the Shar is putting it is a playlist, Rachel, already? I wasn't sure.
Yes, it's a playlist on YouTube.
Okay. So that link that's in the chat here, which we can email again to the entire class list, because I know not everybody is here or not everybody can access it in this moment. But we will email that saying the class series is over. Click here for the full playlist of all the sessions. You can take a walk down memory lane, or you can share it with someone else. Thank you to Rachel Feldman, who is the woman behind the Shar logo here, who is always helping us just make sure that this class runs smoothly, that you don't all pile up in the waiting room while I run a class. So
before you finish,
I didn't finish yet. I'm sharing the next
okay,
video.
But you said some people were leaving. Yes. So I just wanted to tell you how much, and I'm sure I speak for everybody that's on this, how much we've enjoyed, how appreciative we are of the work that you've been putting into putting this together. It's just been marvelous to be part of it and to have it. And you deserve the rest for the summer.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll take the Zoom applause. Thank you. Yeah. It's been a really interesting and meaningful experience for me as well.
And a labor of love.
Yes, very much so. Very, and really a surprise. Like I didn't know where this would take us when we started. It's been 2 years. I'm looking at musicals and Torah now. But there's nothing like Les Misérables. So that's why I've got to, sorry, Farla, but I've got to stop here. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Esther, for those kind words. Thank you, everyone, for all the nodding. So the finale that we're going to watch now, it doesn't start from the very beginning of that song. This clip starts from when he's in the convent and he is alone, and then Cosette and Marius come running in. And I apologize in advance if it gives us an ad, but I have no control over that, of course. So here we go, and listen for that line. It's the story of, what is this a story of?
Now you are here, again beside me. Now I can die in peace, for now my life is blessed.
You will live, Papa, you're going to live. It's too soon to say goodbye.
Yes, Cosette, forbid me now to die. I'll obey. I will try. On this page, I write my last confession. Read it well when I at last am sleeping. It's the story of one who turned from hating, a man who only learned to love when you were in his keeping.
Come with me, the chains will never bind you.
Oh, I am ready for you.
All your grief lost behind you. Lord in heaven, look down on him in mercy.
Forgive me all my trespasses and take me to your glory.
Take my hand, I'll lead you to the truth that once was spoken. To love another person is to see the face of God. Away the sword, the chain will be broken and all men will have their reward. Will you join me on crusade? Will be strong and stand with me? Somewhere beyond the barricade, is there a world you long to see? Do you hear the people sing? Say, do you hear the distant boast? This is the future and we bring it tomorrow.
There we have it. I was trying to find the French quote, but haven't, someone quoted something from it. Yeah, no. No, I keep finding it in English and then someone found something in French that was an approximation from somewhere else. Maybe I'll find it. If anyone finds it, send me an email. Toda Rabba. Thank you for being on this journey with me. It's been great to spend our Wednesdays together. Hope to see you all in shul very soon. We're here.